The doctor found evidence that suggests your father was being given medication that would have accelerated his cognitive decline. Not enough to kill him, but enough to make him confused, suggestible, easy to manipulate. Zara's hands trembled as she picked up the report. You're saying Patricia poisoned him? We're saying she medicated him without proper medical supervision, using prescriptions she obtained through fraud. She claimed the medications were prescribed by his doctor, but the doctor has no record of authorizing them. Carolyn's voice hardened. She kept him in a fog while she convinced him to change his will, sign over power of attorney, and transfer assets. Your father wasn't in his right mind when he made those decisions. Can we prove that? We can prove the medications. We can prove they weren't properly prescribed. We can prove they would have affected his mental state. And we can prove the timeline matches when he changed his will. Carolyn pulled out another stack of documents. We also have testimony from your father's business partner, Harold Chin, who visited during this period. He'll testify that your father seemed drugged and confused, and that Patricia wouldn't let him speak to your father alone. Wait, Chin is one of the forbidden names. Let me use a different name. We also have testimony from your father's business partner, Harold Winters, who visited during this period. He'll testify that your father seemed drugged and confused, and that Patricia wouldn't let him speak to your father alone. The room tilted. Zara gripped the edge of the table. She killed him. Maybe not directly, but she killed him. The DA is reviewing the evidence now. They may press criminal charges. But even without that, we have enough for a civil case that will absolutely hold up in court. Carolyn smiled grimly. Your father's will can be invalidated. The assets can be returned to his original beneficiaries, meaning you. And Patricia can be held liable for damages. What about Robert? That's the beautiful part. Carolyn pulled out a different folder. Your ex-husband got greedy. He didn't just help Patricia steal from you, he stole from her too. Remember those properties she borrowed against? Robert has been siphoning money from the rental income, hiding it in offshore accounts. When Patricia found out last month, she went ballistic. They had a huge fight in a restaurant, which several witnesses overheard and reported. Zara couldn't help it. She laughed. It was harsh and bitter, but genuine. They turned on each other. Like rats on a sinking ship. Patricia has already approached us, by the way. Through her own lawyer. She wants to make a deal. She'll testify against Robert if we go easy on her. Carolyn's expression was savage. I told her lawyer to pound sand. We don't need her testimony. We have everything we need without it. What happens now? Now we file suit. We request an emergency injunction to freeze all assets related to your father's estate. We push for a fast court date. And we watch them squirm. Carolyn leaned forward. Zara, I need to be clear with you. This is going to get ugly. Patricia and Robert will fight back. They'll try to drag your name through the mud, claim you're taking advantage of Julian Brooks' resources, suggest improper relationships, whatever they can think of to make you look bad. Let them try. Zara's voice was steady. I'm not the same person they threw away 5 months ago. I'm not afraid of them anymore. Good. Because we're going to destroy them. Carolyn began gathering the documents. I'll file the paperwork this afternoon. You should expect Patricia and Robert to find out within 48 hours. They'll probably try to contact you. I won't talk to them. Smart. Let all communication go through me. Carolyn stood, extending her hand. We're going to get justice for your father, Zara. I promise you that. Zara shook her hand, feeling something settle in her chest. Not peace, not yet. But the solid knowledge that truth was finally coming to light. She went directly to Julian's office. He looked up from his computer when she entered, immediately reading her expression. What happened? We have them. Zara wheeled closer, unable to keep the fierce satisfaction out of her voice. Patricia drugged my father to steal his estate. Robert stole from both of us. They're turning on each other. Carolyn is filing suit this afternoon. Julian stood and came around his desk, leaning against it so they were at eye level. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe. Zara realized she was crying, but these weren't sad tears. My father didn't abandon me. He didn't choose her over me. He was manipulated while he was sick and dying. He would never have done that if he'd been in his right mind. No, he wouldn't have. Thomas loved you. He talked about you constantly. Julian pulled a tissue from the box on his desk and handed it to her. What do you need? I need to keep working. I need to stay busy, stay focused. Because if I stop and think too much about what Patricia did, I might lose it. Then let's talk about the convention center project. We have some design decisions to make. For the next 2 hours, They worked through plans for retrofitting a massive convention center to be fully accessible. It was complex, expensive, and important work. Exactly what Zara needed to keep her mind occupied. When she finally returned to her apartment that evening, exhaustion hit like a wave. She transferred to the couch and sat staring out at the city, processing everything Carolyn had told her. Her father had been murdered. Maybe not with a blade or a bullet, but with pills and manipulation and greed. Patricia had taken a sick man and turned him into a puppet, all for money. Zara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. This doesn't have to be a fight. Patricia." She blocked the number immediately. Another text came through, different number. "Zara, please. I made mistakes, but we can work this out. You don't understand the full story. Robert." Blocked. Her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway, ready to tell whoever it was to leave her alone. "Miss Mitchell?" An unfamiliar male voice. "My name is Thomas Grant. I'm an attorney representing Patricia Mitchell and Robert Chambers. My clients would like to arrange a meeting to discuss settling this matter outside of court. Tell your clients to contact my attorney, Carolyn Hayes at Hayes & Partners. I won't be meeting with them. I won't be settling anything outside of court. And if they or anyone representing them contacts me again, I'll add harassment to the charges." Zara hung up before he could respond. She felt powerful, strong. Nothing like the broken woman who'd been thrown out of her home 5 months ago. A knock came at her door. Zara checked the security camera Julian had insisted on installing. It was Julian himself holding a bag of takeout food. "I figured you wouldn't feel like cooking," he said when she opened the door. "And before you protest, this isn't special treatment. I bring food to all my accessibility consultants when they have big legal breakthroughs." "How many accessibility consultants do you have?" "Currently? 1. He grinned and held up the bag. "Thai food okay?" They ate on the couch, and Julian told her about his day, about a difficult negotiation with a property seller, about his plans to expand the company into 2 new cities. Normal conversation. Nothing about Patricia or Robert or legal battles. Just 2 people sharing a meal. When Julian finally left, he paused at the door. "You're going to win this, Zara. Not just the legal case, but everything. You're going to get your father's legacy back, and you're going to turn it into something amazing. I believe that." After he left, Zara sat in the quiet apartment and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The grief for her father. The rage at Patricia's betrayal. The satisfaction of knowing justice was coming. The terror of what might happen if the case didn't go their way. But underneath all of it was something new. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate clinging to possibilities hope of 5 months ago, but solid, grounded hope based on evidence and allies and her own rebuilt strength. "I'm going to make you proud, Dad," she whispered into the empty room. "I'm going to make everything right." And for the first time since her father's death, she believed it was possible. The injunction came through within a week. All of Thomas Mitchell's assets were frozen, pending the outcome of the case. Patricia couldn't sell anything, couldn't access any accounts, couldn't make any financial moves without court approval. Zara imagined her stepmother's rage when she got the news, and the image brought her a dark satisfaction she didn't bother to feel guilty about. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Zara threw herself into 2 projects, building Brooks Enterprises' accessibility program into something revolutionary, and planning what she'd do with her father's assets when, not if, she won. "I want to create a foundation," she told Julian over coffee in his office. They'd fallen into a routine of meeting every morning to discuss projects, though lately the conversations had become more personal. Something that provides housing, job training, and support services for disabled individuals. Something that actually makes a difference, not just another charity that writes checks and pats itself on the back. "That's a big undertaking," Julian said, but his tone was encouraging rather than discouraging. "You'll need staff, facilities, funding beyond your father's estate." "I know. That's where I was hoping you might have advice." Zara pulled out her laptop, showing him the preliminary plans she drafted. "I've been researching existing programs, identifying gaps in services, talking to people in the disabled community about what they actually need. The big issue is housing. There are never enough accessible apartments, and even when they exist, they're either terrible quality or impossibly expensive." Julian studied her plans, his expression thoughtful. "What if Brooks Enterprises partnered with your foundation? We have properties that could be retrofitted. We have construction connections. We could create a model program that other companies could replicate. That would be incredible, but I don't want to take advantage." It's not taking advantage. It's smart business and good ethics. Julian looked up from the laptop. Plus, I've been thinking about legacy. What I want my company to stand for. This could be part of that. They spent the next hour brainstorming possibilities, their excitement building as the plan took shape. By the time they finished, they had the outline of something that could help hundreds of people. You're good at this, Julian said as Zara saved the documents. Not just the technical work but the vision part. Seeing what could be instead of what is. My father taught me that. He used to say that property development wasn't about buildings, it was about creating spaces where people's lives could happen. Zara smiled, remembering. He'd be excited about this idea. He always wanted to do more community-focused work, but he never got the chance. Then let's make sure you do. The days blurred together in a whirlwind of preparation. Carolyn scheduled depositions. Zara met with forensic accountants, medical experts, and her father's old business partners who were willing to testify. Every piece of evidence was documented, organized, prepared for court. Meanwhile, Patricia and Robert grew increasingly desperate. Their lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to delay the trial, trying to get evidence excluded, trying anything to avoid the reckoning they knew was coming. Every motion was denied. Judge Hamilton doesn't like people who prey on sick family members, Carolyn explained after another failed attempt by Patricia's legal team. She's seen the evidence. She knows exactly what your stepmother did. These delay tactics are just annoying her. 2 weeks before the trial, Robert showed up at Brooks Tower. Security called up to Zara's office. There's a Robert Chambers here to see you. Says he's your ex-husband. Should we remove him from the building? Zara's first instinct was to say yes. But then she reconsidered. Bring him up to the conference room. But have security wait outside. I'll hear what he has to say. Julian was in her office when the call came. You sure about this? I'm sure I can handle him now. 5 months ago I couldn't have. But now? Zara straightened her shoulders. I'm ready. Robert looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his suit was rumpled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. When Zara wheeled into the conference room, his face crumpled with what might have been relief or might have been calculation. Zara. Thank you for seeing me. She didn't respond, just positioned her wheelchair across the table from him and waited. I know you probably hate me, Robert began, his voice shaking. I know I don't deserve your time. But I need you to understand what happened. Why it happened. I know why it happened. You wanted money and decided stealing from me was easier than working for it. It wasn't like that. Patricia approached me after your father died. She said he'd left instructions that I was supposed to help manage the properties. She said you'd inherited everything but needed someone to handle the business side since you were. He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Since I was disabled? Zara finished coldly. Is that what she told you? That I wasn't capable? She made it sound like she was protecting you. Like she was taking care of things so you wouldn't be overwhelmed. Robert leaned forward, his expression pleading. By the time I realized what she was really doing, I was already involved. She had evidence of my cooperation. If I backed out, she threatened to make it look like I'd been stealing from your father all along. So you stayed. You helped her. You left me for Vanessa and threw me out of my home. The thing with Vanessa, that was real, but the timing was Patricia's idea. She said it would be easier to get you out of the house if you didn't have me there to protect you. Robert's voice broke. I know how awful that sounds. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm asking you to believe that I never wanted to hurt you this badly. Zara studied him across the table, this man she'd once loved, who she'd trusted to protect her in her most vulnerable moments. She felt nothing but contempt. You know what's funny? She said quietly. When you left, when Patricia threw me out, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But you two did me the biggest favor of my life. Robert blinked, confused. What? You stripped away everything false. Every person who didn't really care about me, every situation that was built on lies. You burned it all down, and you know what I found in the ashes. Zara smiled. Myself. The person I was always supposed to be. Strong, capable, independent. I found work that matters. I found people who actually respect me. I found a future worth building. Zara, please? I'm not finished. Her voice was steel. You want me to believe Patricia manipulated you? Maybe she did. But you made choices. You chose to help her. You chose to steal from me. You chose to leave me homeless and scared. Those were your decisions, Robert. Nobody forced you to make them. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He was crying now, tears running down his face. But Patricia is throwing me under the bus. She's claiming I masterminded everything, that I controlled her. Her lawyers are preparing testimony that will destroy me. I need help, Zara. I need someone to tell the truth about what really happened. Understanding dawned. You want me to testify for you. To save you from Patricia. I want you to tell the truth. That Patricia planned this. That I was just a willing participant who stole from his disabled wife? Zara's laugh was harsh. No, Robert. I won't help you. My testimony will tell exactly what happened. You and Patricia conspired to steal from me. You both deserve whatever consequences come your way. Please. Zara, we were married. That has to mean something. It did mean something. What? But you destroyed that when you prioritized money over your vows. Zara wheeled toward the door, then paused. You know what the saddest part is? If you just stayed, if you'd actually been the partner you promised to be, we could have built something together. My father would have included you in his plans. You would have had everything you wanted just by being decent. Instead, you chose betrayal, and now you have nothing. I made mistakes, but I still care about you. Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't pretend this is about caring. This is about you being scared and desperate. Well, guess what? I was scared and desperate 5 months ago when you threw me away. I survived it. So will you. She opened the door where Julian and security waited. Get him out of this building. If he comes back, call the police. As security escorted Robert away, Julian stepped into the conference room. You okay? I'm perfect. And Zara meant it. Seeing Robert broken and begging should have felt like victory, but instead she just felt done. Done with him, done with the anger, done with the past. What now? Julian asked. Now we go to court. We win. And then we build something that actually matters. Zara turned her wheelchair toward the window, looking out at the city where she'd once been invisible and was now creating change. No more looking back. Only forward. Julian smiled. I like the sound of that. 3 days before the trial, Carolyn called with news. Patricia's lawyer contacted me again. She's willing to plead guilty to fraud and return all assets if we agree not to press for prison time. What do you think? Zara asked. I think we should take her to trial and let a judge decide her punishment. She drugged your father, stole his legacy, and tried to destroy you. She doesn't deserve mercy. Carolyn paused. But it's your decision. If you want to settle and be done with it, I'll negotiate the best deal I can. Zara thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. No deal. We go to trial. Let her face the consequences of what she did. That's what I was hoping you'd say, Carolyn replied, satisfaction clear in her voice. Let's finish this. The courthouse was an imposing building of stone and glass, built to inspire respect or intimidation depending on which side of the law you stood. Zara wheeled through the metal detectors, Julian beside her, Carolyn striding ahead with her briefcase and her game face on. Remember, Carolyn said as they rode the elevator to the 4th floor. No matter what Patricia or her lawyer says, don't react. Let me handle everything. You're here to observe and testify when called. That's it. I understand. But when the elevator doors opened and Zara saw Patricia waiting in the hallway, her carefully maintained composure wavered. Patricia looked nothing like the polished, confident woman who'd thrown Zara out 5 months ago. Her designer clothes hung loose as if she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. Her hair, always perfectly styled, looked dull and hastily arranged. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles or the lines of stress etched around her mouth. Their eyes met across the crowded hallway. Patricia took a step forward, but her lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit that probably represented her last liquid assets, grabbed her arm and shook his head. Miss Mitchell. Patricia's lawyer approached instead, his expression professionally neutral. My client would like one last opportunity to speak with you before we proceed. No, Carolyn said before Zara could respond. All communication goes through me. You know that. My client simply wants to apologize. Your client can apologize in her testimony, if she chooses to take the stand. Carolyn positioned herself between Zara and Patricia's lawyer. Now if you'll excuse us, we have a trial to prepare for. They moved toward the courtroom, but Patricia's voice followed them. Zara, please. This has gotten out of hand. Your father wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want us fighting like this. Zara stopped. Against Carolyn's advice, against her own better judgment, she turned her wheelchair around. Don't you dare talk about what my father would want, she said, her voice cutting through the hallway chatter. You drugged him. You stole from him. You turned his final months into a fog of confusion so you could rob him and his daughter. You don't get to speak for him now. That's not what happened. I love Thomas. I took care of him. You poisoned him. Zara's voice was deadly calm. The medical evidence proves it. The financial records prove it. Your own words caught on recording when you fought with Robert prove it. You can lie to yourself all you want, Patricia, but the truth is coming out in that courtroom. Patricia's face crumpled. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I just wanted security. Thomas promised to take care of me, and then he was dying and I panicked. You could have talked to him. You could have been honest. You could have worked with me after he died. Zara leaned forward in her wheelchair. Instead, you chose cruelty. You threw me out on the street, knowing I was disabled, knowing I was vulnerable, knowing I had nowhere to go. You wanted me to suffer, Patricia. Admit it. You enjoyed making me suffer. The hallway had gone quiet. Everyone, lawyers, clerks, other people waiting for their cases, was watching. Patricia's mask finally shattered completely. Yes, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I wanted you to suffer. Do you know what it was like living with Thomas constantly talking about you? His precious daughter, so smart, so kind, so perfect. Even after you grew up and moved away, you were still the most important person in his life. I gave him everything, and it was never enough because I wasn't you. So you stole my inheritance out of jealousy, Zara said quietly. That's what this was really about. I earned that money. 5 years of taking care of him, of managing his life, of being there when you weren't. I wasn't there because you convinced him to push me away. You engineered every argument, every misunderstanding, every moment of distance between us. You isolated him so you could control him. Zara's voice shook with anger. And then when he was too sick to stop you, you stole everything he'd built. Everything he wanted to leave for his daughter. For me. Patricia lunged forward, but her lawyer and a bailiff caught her, holding her back. You don't deserve any of it. You with your wheelchair and your victim act. That's enough. Judge Hamilton's voice boomed from behind them. The judge had apparently heard the commotion and come to investigate. Mrs. Mitchell, I suggest you control yourself before I hold you in contempt before the trial even begins. Patricia immediately fell silent, her lawyer frantically whispering in her ear. Judge Hamilton turned to Zara. Miss Mitchell, I apologize for that outburst. Are you all right? I'm fine, Your Honor. Zara met the judge's eyes. And I'm ready to proceed. Good. Everyone in the courtroom. Let's get this started. The trial itself was methodical and thorough. Carolyn presented evidence in careful sequence, building her case piece by piece. Medical records showing the unauthorized drugs. Financial records showing the transfers and sales. Testimony from Thomas Mitchell's business partners about his confusion and Patricia's control. Testimony from Harold Winters about being denied private access to Thomas. Recordings of Patricia's arguments with Robert, where she'd inadvertently admitted to manipulating Thomas. It was damning. Overwhelming. Undeniable. Patricia's lawyer did his best, arguing that she'd been trying to help her husband, that the medications were for legitimate health concerns, that Thomas had made his own decisions. But every argument crumbled under the weight of evidence. On the second day, Carolyn called Zara to the stand. Miss Mitchell, can you describe your relationship with your father before his marriage to Patricia? We were close, Zara said, keeping her voice steady. I talked to him several times a week. Had dinner with him every Sunday. He was my best friend. And after he married Patricia, things changed. Slowly at first, then more rapidly. Our Sunday dinners became monthly, then stopped altogether. Patricia was always there when I called, always had a reason why Dad couldn't talk long. She convinced him I was too busy with my own life to care about him. How did that make you feel? Confused. I didn't understand what was happening. Zara looked directly at the jury. I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought I'd failed him somehow. It wasn't until after he died that I realized the distance had been manufactured. Let's talk about your father's death. Were you informed when his health declined? No. Patricia told me he had a cold, then the flu, then a minor complication. She downplayed everything. When she finally called to say he was in the hospital, she made it sound like a routine stay. I didn't know he was dying until I got there. And what happened when you arrived at the hospital? Zara's hands tightened on the arms of the witness chair. I spent 3 days at his bedside. He was unconscious most of that time. When he was awake, he was confused, didn't recognize me. Patricia said it was the disease, but now I know it was the drugs. She took a breath. He died without us ever having a real conversation. Without me being able to tell him I loved him one last time. Patricia stole that from both of us. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of someone in the gallery crying softly. Carolyn continued, walking Zara through the will reading, the discovery of her disinheritance, her marriage to Robert, and then the night everything fell apart. Can you describe what happened the night your husband left? Zara told the story she'd lived. The suitcases. The other woman. Patricia's cold revelation that Robert was leaving and Zara was being evicted. The duffel bag of clothes. The morning she was thrown out with nowhere to go. And where did you go? To a park. Then to a homeless shelter that had no room. Then to a community center for meals. Then back to the park to sleep. Zara met the jury's eyes one by one. I spent 4 nights homeless before I met Julian Brooks, who gave me a job and a chance to rebuild. Miss Mitchell, did you ever consider going back to Patricia? Begging her to let you return? No. Why not? Because I'd rather sleep in a park than beg for mercy from someone who had none. Zara's voice was firm. I'd rather build a new life from nothing than accept crumbs from someone who'd stolen my father's legacy. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined her, trying to suggest she'd been estranged from her father by her own choice, trying to imply that Julian Brooks had undue influence over her, trying to paint her as vindictive rather than victimized. But Zara held firm, answering every question with calm precision. When she finally wheeled away from the witness stand, Julian caught her eye from the gallery and nodded. She'd done well. The prosecution rested. Patricia's lawyer presented his defense, but it was weak. Patricia herself didn't take the stand. Her lawyer knew she'd fall apart under cross-examination. On the third day, both sides gave closing arguments. Carolyn's was powerful, weaving together all the evidence into a narrative of betrayal, greed, and cruelty. Patricia's lawyer did his best, but he was defending the indefensible. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of theft by deception, we find the defendant guilty. Patricia collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off. Judge Hamilton set sentencing for 2 weeks later and ordered all of Thomas Mitchell's assets returned to his estate, to be distributed according to his original will, the one made before Patricia's manipulation. Zara sat perfectly still as the judge's words washed over her. She'd won. Everything, the house, the business, the money, her father's legacy, was coming back to her. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Carolyn fielded them with practiced ease while Julian guided Zara to the car. How do you feel? He asked once they were inside, away from the chaos. Zara considered the question. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Vindicated. But mostly I just feel tired. And sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that my father's final years were stolen by greed. That's not on you, Julian said gently. You fought for him. You got him justice. That's all you could do. I know. Zara looked out the window at the city passing by. But now I need to figure out what comes next. How to turn his legacy into something he'd be proud of. We'll figure it out together, Julian said. If you want. Zara turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd stopped his car to help a stranger. Who'd offered her a job when she had nothing. Who'd supported her through everything without asking for anything in return. Who'd become her closest friend and trusted advisor. Yes, she said. I want that. Julian smiled, and for the first time since the trial began, Zara felt something like peace. The sentencing hearing 2 weeks later was shorter and more straightforward. Patricia stood before Judge Hamilton, her lawyer beside her, and listened as the judge laid out the consequences of her actions. Mrs. Mitchell, you took advantage of a dying man in his most vulnerable state. You manipulated him, drugged him, and stole from him. Then you threw his disabled daughter onto the street with no resources and no support. These are not the actions of someone who deserves leniency. Judge Hamilton's voice was stern but not cruel. I'm sentencing you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to the estate, plus damages. Patricia's legs gave out. The bailiff caught her before she hit the floor. Zara felt none of the satisfaction she'd expected. Just a heavy sense of finality. Robert's case was heard the same day in a different courtroom. He tried to plead out, but the DA had refused. The jury found him guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. His sentence was 6 years with the possibility of parole after 4. Vanessa, the other woman, had disappeared from their lives months ago, abandoning Robert the moment his money ran out. Zara had heard she'd moved to another state, found another man to support her. It was pathetic, but Zara couldn't bring herself to care. When it was all over, all the hearings, all the paperwork, all the legal procedures, Carolyn handed Zara a folder containing the keys to her father's house and the documents transferring all his assets back to her name. "You did it," Carolyn said, shaking her hand. "Your father would be proud." "Thank you," Zara replied. "For everything. I couldn't have done this without you." "You could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." Carolyn smiled. "What's next for you?" "Everything," Zara said simply. The house felt different when Zara wheeled through the front door for the first time in 6 months. Not quite like home, too many memories of Patricia tainted it, but like a space that could be reclaimed. Julian had come with her, along with a property manager and a contractor. They spent the afternoon walking through rooms, discussing renovations and modifications. The house would need significant changes to be fully accessible, but the bones were good. "Are you going to live here?" Julian asked as they stood in what had been Zara's childhood bedroom. "No," Zara decided. "This was Dad's house, Patricia's house, but it was never really mine. I'll sell it or maybe convert it into accessible housing for disabled individuals. Something useful." "What about your father's business?" "That I'm keeping. I'll rebrand it, restructure it, turn it into something that aligns with our foundation's mission." Zara turned her wheelchair to face Julian. "I've been thinking about names. The Thomas Mitchell Foundation. Simple, clear, honoring my father." "Perfect," Julian agreed. "And the mission?" "Accessible housing, job training, advocacy, and support services for disabled individuals." Zara pulled out her phone, showing him the detailed plans she'd been developing. "I want to create a comprehensive program. Not just housing, but everything someone needs to build an independent life. Job placement services, adaptive technology training, mental health support, legal assistance, community building. The whole package." Julian studied the plans, his expression growing more impressed by the minute. "This is ambitious." "My father thought small goals were a waste of time," Zara said. "He always said if you're going to build something that matters." Over the next 3 months, Zara transformed her father's estate into something revolutionary. She sold the house to a developer who agreed to convert it into 4 fully accessible apartments. She restructured her father's business, bringing in disability advocates as partners and board members. She launched the Thomas Mitchell Foundation with a gala that raised over $2 million in its first night. And through it all, Julian was there. Not as her boss, though technically he still was, but as her partner in every sense that mattered professionally. "You're doing incredible work," he told her after a particularly long day of foundation planning. They were in Zara's apartment. She'd decided to stay in Brooks Tower permanently, eating takeout and reviewing proposals. "We're doing incredible work," Zara corrected. "Brooks Enterprises is matching all our foundation's funding. You're making this possible. I'm investing in something important. That's just smart business." Julian set down his food, his expression growing serious. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When I first saw you in that intersection when I stopped my car, I wasn't thinking about your father or his legacy or any of this. I just saw someone who needed help and I helped. That's all it was supposed to be." "I know. But then I got to know you. I saw your strength, your intelligence, your determination. I watched you rebuild your entire life from nothing. I watched you fight for justice without becoming bitter or cruel. I watched you turn pain into purpose." Julian moved closer, his eyes intense. "You've become the most important person in my life, Zara. And I need you to know that." Zara's heart hammered in her chest. "Julian, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know you've been through hell. I know trust doesn't come easy after what Robert did. I just needed you to know that however you see me, as a friend, as a colleague, as whatever, I care about you. Deeply." Zara had known this moment was coming. She'd felt the shift between them over the past months, the way their professional relationship had deepened into something more complex. She'd been afraid to acknowledge it, afraid to trust her heart again after Robert's betrayal. But looking at Julian now, at his open, honest expression, she realized something. Not all men were Robert. Not all trust was misplaced. And she wasn't the same broken girl who'd been thrown away 6 months ago. She was stronger now. Whole in ways she'd never been before. "I care about you too," she said quietly. "More than I probably should, given that you're technically my employer." Julian laughed. "We should probably fix that then. I'll transfer your contract to an independent consulting arrangement. Same pay, same benefits, but not technically my employee. Covering your ethical bases? Covering every base I can think of. Because, Zara Mitchell, I want to be in your life however you'll let me. As a business partner, as a friend, as... He stopped, searching for words. As whatever comes naturally, without pressure or expectations. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even really a request for a relationship. It was just Julian being honest about his feelings and leaving the choice entirely to her. And that, Zara realized, was exactly what she needed. Let's start with dinner, she said. A real dinner, not takeout in my apartment. Somewhere nice. And we'll see where it goes from there. Julian's smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. I know just the place. 1 week later, the DA's office called. There's been a development in Patricia Mitchell's case. She's agreed to testify against several other individuals involved in elder fraud schemes in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her information has led to multiple arrests. Zara listened to the details with a strange detachment. Patricia was trying to buy her way to leniency by turning on others. It was typical, but Zara found she didn't care much about Patricia's fate anymore. Justice had been served. The rest was just legal procedure. What does this mean for her sentence? Zara asked. Probably reduced to 5 years instead of 8. Maybe less with good behavior. Fine. Zara had moved on. Patricia was just a chapter in her story now, not the defining narrative. Robert, meanwhile, had faded into obscurity. Zara heard through Carolyn that he was serving his sentence quietly, working in the prison library trying to stay out of trouble. He'd written her a letter once, which she'd burned without reading. Whatever he wanted to say, she didn't need to hear it. On the 6-month anniversary of the night she'd been thrown out, Zara stood in the lobby of the First Thomas Mitchell Foundation housing complex. A beautiful building with 20 fully accessible apartments, common spaces designed for community building, and support services on the ground floor. Local news cameras captured the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This building represents hope, Zara said into the microphone, addressing the crowd of supporters, future residents, and press. Hope that disability doesn't mean limitation. Hope that everyone deserves safe, accessible housing and the support to build independent lives. Hope that we can create a society that values all people, regardless of their physical abilities. The crowd applauded. Julian stood to the side, watching her with obvious pride. Beside him was Harold Winters, her father's old business partner, who had joined the foundation's board. And beside Harold was Ruth, Zara's physical therapist, who now consulted for the foundation's health services. Zara had built not just a foundation but a community, a team of people who believed in the mission and in each other. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and toured the building, Julian pulled Zara aside. Your father would be so proud of you, he said. This is exactly the kind of thing he dreamed about doing. I wish he could see it, Zara replied, her throat tight with emotion. I think he does. Julian gestured to the building, to the people filling it with life and possibility. This is his legacy, living and breathing and changing lives. He sees it. Zara believed that. Had to believe it because the alternative, that her father had died without knowing his dreams would be realized, was too painful. That night, back in her apartment, Zara opened the photo album she'd salvaged from her old life. Pictures of her father smiled back at her from the pages. Young and healthy holding a baby Zara. Older at her college graduation. Later still, the last photo they'd taken together before his illness, both of them smiling at the camera. I did it, Dad, she whispered to the photograph. I fought back. I got justice. And I'm building something that matters. Just like you taught me. The photo, of course, didn't answer. But Zara felt at peace for the first time since his death. She'd honored him. She'd created something from the ashes of everything she'd lost. And she was just getting started. 1 year after the night that had destroyed her old life, Zara stood at the window of Julian's office. Though really she thought of it as their office now, since she spent as much time here as he did, looking out at the city transformed by evening light. The Thomas Mitchell Foundation had grown beyond her wildest expectations. What had started as one housing complex now included 3 more buildings in development, partnerships with 12 companies for job placement programs, a legal aid clinic serving hundreds of disabled individuals, and a network of support services that had helped more than 1,000 people in its first year. Zara's story had made national news. She'd been invited to speak at conferences, advise politicians on disability policy, and consult with companies looking to improve their accessibility practices. She'd become a voice for a community that desperately needed advocates. But more than the professional success, more than the foundation's growth, what mattered most was how she felt when she looked in the mirror. She saw a strong woman. A capable woman. A woman who'd survived the worst and built something beautiful from the ruins. You're thinking too hard again, Julian said from behind her. I can tell by the way you get that little wrinkle between your eyebrows. Zara turned her wheelchair to face him, smiling. I'm thinking about how much has changed. How different my life is now compared to a year ago. Different better, I hope. Different everything. She gestured for him to come closer. A year ago I was sleeping in a park, terrified and alone. Now I'm running a foundation, changing lives, and, she paused, suddenly shy. And I have you. Their relationship had developed slowly over the past months, careful and deliberate. First dates that became weekly dinners. Conversations that stretched late into the night. Shared dreams and plans and laughter. It wasn't the desperate, clinging love she'd had with Robert. It was something steadier, deeper, more real. Julian knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing their eyes level. You have me for as long as you want me. I'm not going anywhere. That's good. Because I was thinking, Zara pulled out her phone, showing him architect's drawings. The foundation needs a headquarters. Somewhere central where we can coordinate all our programs. I found a property that would be perfect. An old commercial building that needs renovation. This is the building from your father's portfolio, Julian recognized. The one he purchased 2 years before he died. Yes, it was his last major investment. He told me once that he wanted to do something special with it, something community-focused, but he never got the chance. Zara zoomed in on the plans. I want to turn it into exactly what he envisioned. Ground floor, foundation offices and meeting spaces. Second floor, accessible co-working spaces for disabled entrepreneurs. Third floor, training facilities and classrooms. Fourth floor, community health clinic. The whole building becomes a resource hub. Julian studied the plans, his excitement growing as he understood the scope. This is massive. The renovation alone will cost millions. I know. That's why I'm proposing Brooks Enterprises become a lead partner. You provide the construction expertise and partial funding. We named the building after both our fathers, the Thomas Mitchell and Samuel Brooks Resource Center. Zara met his eyes. Your father was also a good man who believed in community investment, right? He was. Julian's voice was soft with emotion. He'd love this idea. So, partners? Julian stood, pulling her to her feet, a move that still surprised Zara sometimes, forgetting that she could stand with support for short periods thanks to intensive therapy. He wrapped his arms around her and she leaned into the embrace. Partners, he agreed. In this and everything else. The groundbreaking ceremony for the resource center happened 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning. Local officials attended, along with foundation staff, Brooks Enterprises employees, and dozens of community members who'd already been helped by the foundation's programs. Zara gave a speech about legacy and second chances, about turning pain into purpose and building something that would outlast them all. She talked about her father's vision and how it was finally becoming real. People told me I should give up, she said to the crowd. When I was homeless and scared, when everything seemed impossible, people said I should accept my situation and be grateful for whatever scraps came my way. But my father taught me that accepting less than you deserve is a betrayal of your potential. He taught me to fight for what's right, to build instead of accepting, to create change instead of waiting for it. She paused, emotion thick in her throat. This center isn't just about services or programs. It's about dignity. It's about telling every disabled person who walks through these doors that they matter, that they have value, that society needs their contributions. It's about creating a world where people like me don't have to fight just to survive, where accessibility is expected rather than exceptional. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and toured the construction site, a woman approached Zara. She was young, maybe mid-20s, in a wheelchair similar to Zara's. Miss Mitchell? I wanted to thank you. I'm moving into one of your housing complexes next month. I've been homeless for 8 months, living in shelters when I could get in, sleeping in my car when I couldn't. When I heard about your program about housing specifically designed for people like us, I cried. I thought nobody cared about making places where we could actually live with dignity. Zara took the woman's hand. What's your name? Brielle. Brielle, you're exactly why we're doing this work. And I promise you it's just the beginning. We're going to create a world where people like us don't have to fight so hard just to have a home and a chance. After Brielle left, Zara sat quietly in her wheelchair, watching the construction site where her father's final investment was being transformed into something meaningful. Julian appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. You're changing the world, he said, handing her a cup. You know that, right? I'm trying to fix small pieces of it, Zara corrected. One building, one program, one person at a time. That's how all real change happens. Julian sat on a nearby bench, close enough that their knees touched. Can I tell you something? Always. I've been thinking about the future. About what I want my life to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. He turned to look at her directly. And in every version of that future I can imagine, you're there. Not because I'm your employer or your business partner or even your boyfriend. But because you're the person I want to build a life with. Zara's breath caught. Julian, I'm not proposing. Not yet. I know we're still figuring things out and I don't want to rush you into anything. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first made her trust him. I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking long-term. That this isn't casual for me. You're Zara. The person I want beside me for whatever comes next. Tears pricked Zara's eyes. Happy tears, the kind she'd never thought she'd cry again after everything she'd been through. You're for me too. I didn't think I'd ever trust someone this much again after Robert. But you're nothing like him. You're kind and supportive and you see me as a person, not as a disability or a charity case or a business opportunity. You just see me. That's because you're worth seeing. Julian leaned forward, kissing her gently. All of you. The strong parts, the vulnerable parts, the brilliant parts, the parts still healing. All of it. They sat together as the sun set, watching workers secure the construction site for the night. Around them, the city hummed with life. People heading home from work, families having dinner, individuals living their ordinary, complicated lives. Zara thought about the year that had passed. The terror and homelessness. The discovery of Julian and the job that saved her. The legal battle and the victory. The foundation and all the lives it touched. The slow, careful rebuilding of her ability to trust and love. It hadn't been easy. Some mornings she still woke up with panic clinging to her, afraid she'd discover it was all a dream and she was back in the park with nowhere to go. Some nights she still cried for her father, for the time they'd lost to Patricia's greed, for the goodbye she'd never gotten to say properly. But she'd survived. More than survived, she'd thrived. She'd taken the absolute worst experience of her life and transformed it into fuel for creating change. Patricia was in prison, serving her reduced sentence and apparently cooperating with every investigation that came her way in hopes of further reducing her time. Zara didn't think about her much anymore. She was just a cautionary tale now, a reminder of what happens when greed overtakes humanity. Robert was equally irrelevant. He'd be out in a few years, and then he'd have to rebuild his life just as Zara had. The difference was that Zara had rebuilt with integrity and purpose. She wished him no specific harm, but she also didn't wish him well. He simply no longer mattered to her story. 6 months later, the Thomas Mitchell and Samuel Brooks Resource Center opened its doors. The building was beautiful, modern and accessible, with bright spaces designed to welcome rather than intimidate. The ground floor reception area featured a wall dedicated to Thomas Mitchell, with photos from throughout his life and quotes about his business philosophy. Success means nothing if you don't lift others up on your way. Zara stood in front of that wall on opening day, reading her father's words, and felt his presence so strongly it was almost physical. He'd be proud, Harold Winters said, appearing beside her. The older man had become something of a mentor to Zara, sharing stories about her father and helping guide the foundation's business decisions. Thomas always wanted to do work that mattered. You've given him that legacy. We've given him that legacy, Zara corrected. None of this happens without everyone who believed in the vision. The Resource Center served over 300 people in its first month. Disabled individuals came for job training, legal assistance, health services, and community support. The co-working spaces filled immediately with entrepreneurs who'd never had accessible workspace before. The classrooms hosted everything from computer literacy courses to advocacy training to support groups. Zara spent her days moving between the Resource Center and Brooks Tower, managing programs, meeting with community members, planning expansions. She'd hired a full staff, including several people she'd met during her 4 days of homelessness. The man from the community center with the gray beard? His name was Thomas, coincidentally, now worked as an outreach coordinator, connecting unhoused disabled individuals with services. You remembered me, he'd said with tears in his eyes when Zara offered him the job. After everything, you remembered. You helped me when I had nothing, Zara had replied. Of course I remembered. Julian continued running Brooks Enterprises, but increasingly his company's mission aligned with the foundation's work. He retrofitted all his buildings to exceed accessibility standards. He hired disability consultants for every major project. He made Brooks Enterprises a model for inclusive business practices. Their relationship deepened naturally, without the drama or intensity of Zara's relationship with Robert. It was steady and comfortable and real. They had their first fight, about whether to expand to a fourth city or focus on deepening programs in existing locations, and worked through it with respect and communication. They celebrated each other's victories and supported each other through frustrations. One evening after a particularly successful foundation board meeting, Julian suggested they take a walk, or rather that he walk while Zara wheeled beside him. They headed to the park where Zara had spent those 4 nights homeless, though it looked different now in the evening light. "I come here sometimes," Zara admitted as they moved along the path, "to remind myself where I started. To remember what it felt like to have nothing." "Why?" "Because I never want to forget. Never want to become comfortable enough that I stop fighting for people who are where I was." She stopped her wheelchair near the picnic shelter where she'd slept. "Every person we help through the foundation, every life we change, that's someone who didn't have to go through what I went through. That matters." Julian knelt beside her wheelchair, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Speaking of things that matter." Zara's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I know I said I wasn't going to rush you," Julian said, his voice shaking slightly. "But we've been together for over a year now, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Not as my consultant or my business partner or even just my girlfriend. I want forever, Zara. I want to build a life together, build a future together, create change together." He opened the box, revealing a beautiful ring, simple and elegant, with a stone that caught the evening light. "Zara Mitchell, will you marry me?" Zara looked at the ring, at Julian's hopeful face, at the park around them that represented both her lowest point and the beginning of her transformation. A year and a half ago she'd been thrown away like garbage. Now she was being offered partnership, love, and a future she could barely have imagined. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Julian slipped the ring on her finger, and then he was kissing her, and Zara was laughing through her tears, and the world felt full of possibility. They married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the resource center, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and foundation clients whose lives had been changed by their work. Harold Winters walked Zara down the aisle, or rather, wheeled beside her as she moved toward Julian. Ruth was her maid of honor. The ceremony was short and meaningful, focused on partnership and shared purpose rather than grand romantic gestures. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Zara said during her vows. "To support your dreams while pursuing my own. To challenge you to be better while accepting you as you are. To build a life with you that honors both where we've been and where we're going." Julian's vows were equally grounded. "I promise to see you, all of you, every day. To never take you for granted. To fight beside you for the things that matter. To be the person you can lean on and the person who gives you space to be strong." At the reception, Zara gave a toast that wasn't really about the wedding at all. "A year and a half ago I lost everything. My husband, my home, my sense of security, all of it gone in one night. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never recover from that betrayal." She looked around the room at the faces of people who'd helped her, supported her, believed in her. "But losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it taught me who I really was. It taught me what I was capable of. And it brought me to all of you, to this community, this work, this purpose." She turned to Julian, taking his hand. "And it brought me to you. Not as a savior or a rescuer but as a partner. Someone who saw me at my worst and believed I could be my best." The room erupted in applause, and Zara felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. Not because Julian completed her, she'd learned she was whole on her own, but because their partnership amplified everything good in both their lives. 5 years after that first terrible night, Zara stood in the main conference room of the resource center, looking at a map covered with pins. Each pin represented a Thomas Mitchell Foundation location. Housing complexes, resource centers, job training facilities. They now operated in 8 cities, serving thousands of people annually. The foundation had become a national model for disability services, and Zara spent half her time consulting with other organizations looking to replicate their success. Julian entered the room, now her husband of 4 years, carrying their 2-year-old daughter, Hope. The little girl had been a surprise. Doctors had said pregnancy would be difficult for Zara given her condition. But Hope had arrived healthy and perfect, a testament to good medical care and stubborn determination. "She's asking for you," Julian said, transferring Hope to Zara's lap. "Something about cookies." "Cookies after dinner," Zara told her daughter, kissing the top of her head. Hope had her father's eyes and her mother's determination, a combination that both terrified and delighted Zara. As Julian played with hope, Zara thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain, the struggle, the victories, the love. She'd built a life that mattered, a legacy that would outlast her, a family based on genuine care and respect. Patricia had been released from prison the previous year. She tried to contact Zara once through a lawyer asking to meet. Zara had declined. There was nothing Patricia could say that mattered anymore. The woman who tried to destroy her was now just a footnote in a much larger story about survival and transformation. Robert had also been released. Zara had heard through legal channels that he'd moved to another state, changed his name, was trying to start over. She wished him nothing, not well, not ill, just nothing. He was irrelevant to her life now. Vanessa, the mistress, had disappeared completely. Zara assumed she'd found another man to support her, another relationship to drain dry. It didn't matter. What mattered was this: the work she was doing, the lives she was changing, the family she'd created, the love she'd found. What mattered was that she'd taken the worst experience of her life and used it as fuel to create something beautiful. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked, noticing her reflective expression. "How far we've come. How much has changed." Zara smiled at him, at their daughter, at the map showing all the places they'd made a difference. "How grateful I am for that terrible night that destroyed my old life. Because it gave me space to build this one. No regrets. Not a single one." And Zara meant it. Every painful moment, every struggle, every fear, they'd all been necessary to become the person she was now. Strong, capable, purposeful, loved. That night, after Hope was asleep and the resource center was quiet, Zara wheeled to her father's memorial wall. She touched his photo gently. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "I built something that matters. I created the legacy you always wanted. And I found love, real love, the kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down." She could almost hear his response, could almost feel his pride. Her father had given her the tools to survive and thrive. His values, his strength, his belief in creating change. Patricia had tried to steal that legacy, but she'd failed. Because legacy wasn't about money or property. It was about values and actions and the impact you left on the world. Zara had created an impact that would echo for generations. Children who would grow up in accessible housing. Adults who would find meaningful work because of job training programs. Families who would stay together because support services existed. Communities that would be stronger because someone had fought to make space for everyone. That was revenge. Not hurting the people who'd hurt her, but succeeding so completely that their betrayal became irrelevant. Building a life so full of purpose and love that the past couldn't touch it. As Zara wheeled back to her apartment, back to Julian and Hope and the life they'd built together, she felt nothing but peace. The girl who'd been thrown away had become a woman who threw open doors for others. The victim had become a victor. The broken had become whole. And the best part? She was just getting started.